The summer morning was quiet, the lake shimmering under the early sun. My cabin sat peacefully at the edge of the water, a place I had built and maintained for years. I had spent countless weekends restoring it, painting the walls, and building the dock with my own hands. It was my sanctuary, a retreat from the noise and demands of the world. That peace ended abruptly when a letter arrived from the HOA. They claimed I was violating community rules, that my cabin and dock were unauthorized and needed to be removed. I stared at the letter, incredulous. I had purchased the land long before the HOA existed, and all my paperwork was in perfect order. A few days later, representatives from the HOA showed up at my cabin. They wore stern expressions and carried clipboards. They started lecturing me about fines, violations, and potential legal action. I listened patiently, letting them speak, knowing full well that their authority did not extend to my property. Then they made the mistake of threatening to call the police. I smiled quietly, stepping aside to let them see the view of the lake and the cabin. I told them calmly that not only did I own this land, but I also owned the surrounding property that the HOA claimed to control. Their faces went pale as I handed over the deeds, surveys, and legal documents proving my ownership. The next hour was surreal. The HOA representatives fumbled through their notes, trying to reconcile their authority with the facts. I watched quietly, sipping my coffee on the porch, enjoying the calm water and the gentle breeze. They finally realized that their fines, their threats, and their rules held no power here. When they left, I made a few calls. I contacted the county and the sheriff, ensuring that the HOA would not return without permission. I even installed clear signage marking the boundaries of my property. It was a quiet victory, the kind that required no shouting or confrontation, just preparation and patience. The lake remained peaceful, the cabin untouched, and the HOA had no choice but to back off. For the first time in years, I felt completely secure. I had shown them, without aggression, who really owned the land. And as I sat on the dock, watching the sun glint off the water, I knew this place would remain mine for years to come. Weeks passed, and the HOA seemed to vanish from my life. I spent my days maintaining the cabin, fishing from the dock, and enjoying the solitude I had fought to protect. The neighbors who once whispered about my supposed violations now nodded politely when we crossed paths. Some even approached me cautiously, curious about how I had handled the situation. One afternoon, a car pulled up near the cabin. I watched as a familiar face stepped out, one of the HOA board members who had visited before. He looked nervous, shifting papers in his hands. I waved calmly, inviting him over to sit on the porch with me. He spoke carefully, apologizing for the confusion and the aggressive approach of the HOA. He admitted that they had miscalculated the property boundaries and had overstepped their authority. I listened quietly, letting him speak, knowing that the lake and the cabin needed no further confrontation. By the time he left, the tension that had lingered for weeks had dissolved completely. That evening, I walked along the edge of the lake, the water lapping gently at my feet. I thought about how easily things could have escalated if I had reacted with anger instead of preparation. Owning the land had given me power, but patience and calm had allowed me to assert it wisely. The cabin was my sanctuary once again, and the lake reflected the clear sky above as if approving my quiet victory. Over the following months, I reinforced the boundaries of my property with subtle markers. I installed a few cameras for security and kept all deeds and documents organized in a safe place. The HOA never returned. Their influence diminished in the face of undeniable proof. I continued to enjoy the solitude and freedom of my lake cabin, knowing that I had protected it not with confrontation but with certainty and calm resolve. The seasons changed, and the cabin grew more beautiful with each passing month. Flowers bloomed near the porch, and the dock weathered into a perfect spot for quiet reflection. I spent long evenings watching the sunset over the water, feeling a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. The HOA had underestimated me, and now their absence only reminded me of how important it was to stand firm when protecting what was rightfully mine. One crisp autumn morning, I decided to host a small gathering at the cabin. A few friends arrived, carrying baskets of food and blankets for the cool evening. We laughed and shared stories around a small fire near the dock, the lake reflecting the orange and gold of the surrounding trees. It felt liberating to enjoy my property without fear or interference. Midway through the evening, I noticed a car approaching slowly from the gravel road. For a moment, my heart tightened, expecting another confrontation from the HOA. But it was only a local delivery driver, waving as he passed by, unaware of the tension that had filled this place months before. I exhaled slowly, letting the peace of the night settle over me. The fire crackled, and the stars began to emerge above the lake. I watched my friends enjoying the calm water and the quiet woods. It struck me how much had changed since the HOA had first tried to impose their authority. What had started as a battle over rules and fines had become a lesson in patience, preparation, and the power of knowing your rights. As the night deepened, I walked along the dock alone. The water was still, mirroring the moon and the soft glow of lanterns. I thought about the freedom I had fought to protect and the tranquility that came from standing firm. Owning the land had been the foundation, but my resolve had made it a sanctuary. And as the cool breeze brushed my face, I knew the cabin and the lake would remain mine, untouched and serene, for years to come. Over the following weeks, life at the cabin settled into a steady rhythm. Mornings began with the soft light of dawn reflecting off the lake. I would sip my coffee on the porch, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. It was a simple pleasure, one that felt earned after months of tension and uncertainty. Neighbors began to approach me more openly. Some asked questions about the property. Others simply stopped to exchange friendly greetings. There was a noticeable shift in how they viewed me. The once quiet and unassuming woman at the lake had proven herself capable of standing her ground. One afternoon, I received a phone call from a county official. They informed me that all records had been reviewed and confirmed my ownership of the land. Any previous claims by the HOA were now formally nullified. I thanked them quietly, realizing that the bureaucracy had finally aligned with reality. With that reassurance, I focused on improving the cabin and the surrounding land. I planted a small vegetable garden, repaired a section of the dock, and added a few benches along the lakeshore. Every improvement reminded me that this was my sanctuary, a place I had fought for and now fully controlled. Evenings were spent by the fire, the lake reflecting the colors of sunset. Friends and family visited often, enjoying the calm and beauty I had preserved. And though the HOA remained in the background, powerless to interfere, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I had protected my land with patience, preparation, and unwavering resolve. And as the stars shimmered over the water each night, the cabin stood as a testament to the peace and freedom I had claimed. As the seasons shifted, the cabin became more than just a retreat. It was a symbol of perseverance and quiet strength. I spent mornings walking along the shoreline, skipping stones and observing the wildlife that had returned with the freedom of undisturbed land. Deer wandered near the tree line and ducks glided across the lake, undisturbed by any human interference. Occasionally, I would receive messages from former HOA members. Some were apologetic, others curious about how I had secured my property. I responded politely, sharing advice when asked but never dwelling on the past disputes. The power of ownership and knowledge had done more than silence the HOA. It had created a sense of respect even among former adversaries. One chilly evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I lit a lantern on the dock. The glow reflected softly on the water and highlighted the calm ripples of the lake. I thought back to the first confrontation, remembering the fear and uncertainty that had filled those moments. Now it felt almost surreal, a distant memory replaced by confidence and peace. I invited a few close friends to the cabin for a quiet dinner. We cooked over the fire, laughing and sharing stories as the night deepened. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine and wood smoke. I realized how much I had learned from the ordeal, not just about property rights, but about patience, preparation, and standing firm. As I watched the moon rise above the lake, I knew the cabin was truly mine. It was a place of refuge, strength, and freedom, and I felt certain that no HOA or outside force could ever take that away. The following morning, the lake was calm and still, reflecting the soft colors of dawn. I walked along the shoreline, feeling the cool grass beneath my feet and listening to the gentle lapping of the water. The cabin stood behind me, sturdy and serene, a testament to years of effort and determination. Every plank of wood, every nail, every brushstroke felt like a small victory over the challenges I had faced. Neighbors waved as they passed, some stopping briefly to chat about the beauty of the lake or the changing seasons. I realized how much had changed since the HOA had first tried to assert control. Where there had once been tension and fear, there was now respect and quiet admiration. People had witnessed my resolve and learned the value of standing firm. That afternoon, I decided to expand the garden near the cabin. I planted rows of vegetables and herbs, imagining the meals they would later produce. The earth felt rich and welcoming beneath my hands, and I felt a connection to the land that went beyond ownership. This place was more than property. It was life, nurture, and sanctuary. As the sun began to set, I lit a fire on the dock and watched the flames dance against the fading light. The reflection on the water was mesmerizing, a mirror of the calm I had fought to achieve. Friends arrived carrying food and blankets, and we gathered to enjoy the evening together. Laughter echoed across the lake, mingling with the sound of the fire and the gentle breeze. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. The cabin, the lake, and the land surrounding it were mine in every sense. The HOA could not interfere, could not intimidate, and could not take away the sanctuary I had preserved. And as stars began to emerge overhead, I knew this place would remain a haven for years to come, a symbol of quiet strength and unwavering determination. Over the next few weeks, life at the cabin settled into a comfortable routine. Mornings were spent tending to the garden and checking the docks for repairs. The lake remained calm, its surface reflecting the sky like glass. I would sip my coffee on the porch, listening to birds and the gentle rustle of the trees. Occasionally, I would see the distant figures of the HOA members driving by. They kept their distance now, wary of the legal authority and evidence I had established. It was a quiet triumph, the kind that required no confrontation or argument. The peace of my property was protected, and that alone brought satisfaction. One late afternoon, a group of friends arrived for a weekend at the cabin. We carried food and blankets, prepared for a simple gathering by the lake. Laughter and chatter filled the air as we unpacked and settled in. The fire was lit on the dock, and its warm glow reflected across the water, illuminating the smiles of everyone present. As night fell, I stood at the edge of the dock, looking out over the lake. The moon rose slowly, casting a silver path across the calm surface. I thought of the long journey from confrontation to tranquility, from uncertainty to complete ownership. Every struggle, every document, every quiet moment of patience had led to this serenity. The cabin and the lake felt alive with possibility. Each ripple of the water, each whisper of wind through the trees, seemed to celebrate the freedom and security I had earned. And as the fire crackled behind me and friends gathered around, I knew that this sanctuary, my sanctuary, would remain untouchable and cherished for years to come. The following morning, the lake was bathed in a soft golden light. Mist rose from the water as I stepped onto the dock, feeling the cool wood beneath my feet. The garden near the cabin had grown lush and vibrant, a testament to the care and attention I had poured into it. Birds sang from the trees, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and earth. I spent the day organizing supplies and making small improvements around the cabin. Every nail hammered and every board replaced felt like a small reinforcement of the sanctuary I had built. Neighbors passed by on their morning walks and waved politely. Some stopped to ask questions about the lake or the property, and I answered with quiet confidence. As afternoon approached, I walked along the shoreline, observing the wildlife. Deer grazed near the treeline, and ducks glided smoothly across the lake. I thought about the past months and the attempts of the HOA to challenge me. Their threats and fines now seemed distant and insignificant. By evening, I had set up a fire near the dock, preparing for another quiet night. Friends arrived carrying food and blankets, eager to enjoy the peaceful retreat. We sat together, sharing stories and laughter, the lake reflecting the colors of the sunset. It was a moment of perfect calm, a reward for the patience and resolve that had preserved this land. As darkness fell and stars began to appear, I stood quietly at the edge of the dock. The cabin behind me was secure, the lake in front of me serene. I knew that the sanctuary I had fought to protect was truly mine. And as the night air filled with the gentle sounds of nature, I felt a deep and lasting sense of freedom and triumph. The nights grew quieter as the season changed. Crisp air filled the cabin, and the lake reflected the pale light of the moon. I spent my evenings on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the gentle lapping of the water against the dock. The tranquility of the place was a constant reminder of the peace I had fought to secure. One morning, I decided to explore the far side of the property. The trees were dense and the ground uneven, but the beauty of the untouched land made the effort worthwhile. I discovered a small clearing where wildflowers grew and the sunlight filtered through the branches. It was a perfect spot for reflection, a hidden corner of my sanctuary. Neighbors occasionally passed along the gravel road, some stopping to exchange friendly greetings. The whispers and speculation from the past had faded into quiet respect. Even the distant presence of the HOA no longer carried any weight. The land was mine, the cabin my retreat, and the lake a mirror of freedom. As autumn deepened, the leaves turned shades of gold and red. I spent my days tending the garden and repairing the dock in preparation for the coming winter. Evenings were spent around the fire with friends, the laughter echoing across the calm water. I realized that the cabin had become more than a home. It was a symbol of resilience, patience, and quiet victory. One night, standing at the edge of the dock, I looked out across the lake. The reflection of the stars shimmered on the surface, and the cool breeze brushed my face. I thought about the challenges I had faced, the confrontation with the HOA, and the months of vigilance and care. Every struggle had led to this perfect moment of calm and freedom. And as the night deepened, I knew that my sanctuary would remain safe, untouched, and mine for years to come. As winter approached, the cabin remained a haven of peace and solitude. Snow dusted the roof and blanketed the ground around the lake, turning the landscape into a quiet wonderland. I spent my days inside by the fire, planning improvements for the coming spring and reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The HOA never returned, their authority and threats rendered meaningless by the undeniable proof of my ownership. Neighbors continued to treat me with respect, some even stopping to admire the serene beauty of the property I had preserved. The lake, calm and undisturbed, mirrored the sky and the trees, a symbol of the tranquility I had fought to protect. Sitting on the porch one evening, wrapped in a blanket and sipping warm tea, I watched the sunset over the water. The cabin, the land, and the lake were mine completely. Every challenge, every moment of patience and preparation had led to this lasting peace. And as the stars appeared in the clear winter sky, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. I had defended my sanctuary, preserved my freedom, and claimed a lifetime of quiet happiness on the land I truly owned.